Hey, this is Josh with Inside Selling. I am here with Blessin Adogame. She is in college, but she's not just taking classes and listening to lectures. She's creating her own personal brand on LinkedIn. She's actually a LinkedIn campus editor. We're going to learn a little bit more about that. And she's also an engineering student at the school. Blessin, thank you so much for carving out the time to chat today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Blessing, let me hear your story. Like, what's your deal? Where were you? How did you get here? Why engineering? Like, take me back.
Sure, definitely. So I was born in Nigeria, where I lived there for just less than 2 years. And from there, I moved to Germany for 6 years. German was actually my first language. After Germany, I moved to Scotland in the UK for 10 years. Then at the end of my high school career, during my senior year of high school, I moved to Princeton, New Jersey, and now I'm studying at Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Now, so, why engineering? Like, what attracted you to that?
I like creating solutions to problems, and I think that's why engineering was such a interesting field for me because through my experience of moving to different countries, I've always had to create solutions to the problems I was faced with. So I think engineering really interested me.
Like, give me an example. So you're in Nigeria or you're in Scotland and you see this problem. Like, give me an example of what that means.
Sure. So one of my problems, I guess it's a universal problem, was just getting used to a new culture, getting used to a new environment. And so while some people would almost tremble or dwell in that situation, I decided to create my own experience. So whether that's through using social media to interact with more people, or whether that's through creating new programs that will help people like me who are in similar situations.
Yeah, so here you are in Nigeria, and now you're going to a completely different country. You probably don't know anybody.
Yes.
And so you would write about your experiences. What would you do? You would write about them. You would produce videos about them.
So when I was in Nigeria moving to Germany, obviously I was very young. So something that I did was, just because German was my first language, it was just understanding the culture there compared to what I remembered in Nigeria. And then from moving to Scotland from Germany, I used social media. I used the internet to learn about what life was like in the UK. So I watched YouTube videos to understand what it was like and what I could expect there. And then once I got there, I would journal and I would write about my experiences, which I now use when I'm in America.
So this journaling, what was the reason you did it? Was it like to make you feel better? What kind of benefits did it have that you realized? Because I've read about the benefits of journaling. I don't do it, but I've heard that it's peaceful, but would love to learn about you. Like, what did it do for you, just writing in your journal?
It's definitely, one aspect of it is to make me feel better, but the more important aspect for me is to understand where I came from and what my past experiences have been like. Moving to Scotland, I knew that that wasn't the end of my journey. I knew that I would continue moving because of my dad's profession. So I wanted to document my journey along the way.
Is that what brought you to Scotland? Your dad moved
Yes.
and he said, hey, you're coming with me. And you said, I guess I have to come with you. I don't really have a
Exactly.
choice. What was the hardest thing? I mean, I would imagine you had a lot of friends in Nigeria and now you have to move.
Yeah, so the hardest thing for me was making friends, especially going to a new school where I didn't know the language of English. I had to learn English as well as, interact with more people and understand the education system there. So that definitely was the hardest thing for me.
Were people nice, or were there like bullies? Like, how did it go socially for you?
Socially, it was very difficult because, you're at school, you see a new person come in that looks completely different from you and they speak a completely different language. So for me, fitting in was definitely the hardest thing. But because I've moved around so many times, I realized that fitting in isn't what I really wanted to do. For me, it has always been about standing out. And that's something that I continue to embrace wherever I go, because I know that I'm different and I know that my difference is my destiny.
I love your difference is, and your difference is your destiny. And people are mean at that age, right? Like this is what, middle school. That's a tough age to be moving. Like there's I'm sure you bumped into like some hate.
Exactly.
And how did you deal with that? Like when you were getting bullied or when you were getting made fun of, which I'm sure happened. How did you deal with that? I know the journaling helped, but like that's a lot to handle.
Exactly. It took a lot of reflecting on my part because, on the outside, people were being mean to me, but on the inside, I also struggled with knowing my own identity because, I was born in Nigeria, then moved to different countries. And when people asked me, where are you from? I didn't know what to say. So when it comes to journaling as well, it took a lot from me to write down my feelings and to really talk about it externally with my friends, with my family, and then they encouraged me to embrace my difference. And when people ask me where I'm from now, I say I'm a global citizen because I truly embrace the different countries that I've lived in.
Is that what you learned? Is that the primary lesson that you learned about yourself through journaling, that you are embracing your uniqueness?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so now you end up going from Scotland to the States because your dad
Yes.
is switching jobs. He's so inconsiderate. Every time you make friends, he's like, hey, I'm switching jobs. And again, you have to go through this. What did you bump into the same type of issues going from Scotland to the States, or were you a little bit more prepared to handle the things that you were bumping into?
I would say a bit of both. So Scotland was a place that I spent the majority of my life. I was there for 10 years. So even though I expected to leave, I didn't expect it to be so soon. And because I moved in my senior year of high school, everyone in the high school that I ended up going to already knew each other for the 4 years that they were at high school. So you have a new person coming in. Again, they look different. They're still speaking the same language, but now with a different accent. So again, it was the whole struggle of trying to get assimilated to everything. So that definitely was a struggle for me, but I knew that this time I didn't want to dwell the same way I dwelled when I moved to Germany, the same way I dwelled when I moved to Scotland. I wanted to be different. I wanted to create an impact. So when I moved to college, I knew that I wanted to switch my situation around. And that's when I started building my personal brand. That's when I started creating opportunities for myself and for others.
I really want to talk about this. You call it dwelling, blaming yourself and getting into this negative mindset. It sounds like there was a switch that was flipped at some point where you went from this blame to empowerment and taking responsibility. Do you remember when that happened? Because you were dwelling. I would imagine you were sad sometimes, maybe even depressed sometimes of everything that was going on. And we have your dad to blame. Let's face it, if he's watching this. Hey, no, I'm just kidding. So do you remember when you actually went and made that switch? Do you remember when that happened? What take us back to that time.
Sure. So the first year, or the only year that I was doing high school here in the States, I was a very quiet person. I didn't want to make friends. I didn't join in any school activities or any clubs or anything like that. That was my dwelling phase. And it switched for me because while everyone from Scotland was like, oh, wow, you're in America, you must be so happy. I was like, no, I'm miserable. But I realized that instead of seeing that as a disadvantage, I wanted to see that as an opportunity, just like how anyone else sees, moving to America as an opportunity.
But how did you do that? Like, that's easy. Like, how did you because so many people would have just dwelled. Like, how did you know that was the time to make the switch? Did you just kind of feel like I'm not happy, or did someone talk to you? Like, how did you know? Do you remember that moment?
So it was more of a mindset switch to me. I knew that I had to, so basically background, I wanted to move back to Scotland to go to college. But because of my whole family was now in the United States, my dad was like, okay, you might as well stay here. And I think that was the switch. I didn't want to spend so much money to go to college in America where I would just be dwelling and where I wouldn't be doing anything, because I knew that if I went back to Scotland, education there is almost free. And I didn't want to have an experience where I would be spending so much money, but not taking advantage of anything. So I knew that going into college, I want to take advantage of everything that both America, but also the college gives me. And from there, I was like, okay, Blessin, take advantage of all the resources, take advantage of all the opportunities that people here might not take advantage of because, it's something that they're used to. So that's really where it flipped.
when you work in a bakery, you take the smell of the bread for granted, right? I mean, that's kind of what you're saying. It's like,
Yep.
and Justin spoke about this as well, is like, it's one thing to have access to these programs, but it's another thing to actually do something with the information. So you not only looked at what was available to you, you actually did something with it, which most people don't do. So what did you do? What did you learn about, and what did you do?
So one of the things for me, this is what I took from my journey back from in Germany. I started connecting with all of the, or not all of them, I started connecting with people who had been accepted to my college, and I started to connect with them through Facebook, just creating friendships, just talking to them online, so that when I got to college physically, I already had, a friend group there. So
wait, so you knew these people already, or you friended them because you knew they were going to the school?
Yeah, I knew they were going to Drexel University, so I connected.
How did you know that? It was something you saw on Facebook? You were able to see that?
Yeah, so at Drexel University, they have a group where all of the accepted students get into on Facebook, and from there, I looked through the member list. I started connecting with people, and that's how I grew my friend group.
So that's pretty fantastic, right? I mean, they have the Facebook group, but I'm like, how many people actually use that to sort of warm up the crowd, so to speak? So what was the move? Like, you'd find some people and you would just friend request them and start a chat with them? Like, say, hey, I'm Blessin, you're going to be lucky to meet me, or what was the move there?
I would look for similar interests. So similarly to how I do that through LinkedIn, I did that through Facebook. I looked through their profile. If there was one thing that I could relate with them on, I would start the conversation through there. One of the friends that I'm really good friends with now, she shared a lot about food. So, I connected with her, and I was like, you know what? I love you share everything about BuzzFeed and everything like that. And that's how we started.
That is a fantastic tip in life. I mean, one great book, I don't know if you've read this, Blessin, but one of my favorite books that I've ever read is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's really a timeless book. And one of the things that he writes about pretty extensively is, if you make people feel special about the things that they're interested in, you will attract people. Some of the best friends that I don't think know one thing about me, but I'm so interested in what they do that attracts people. I don't know anything about sports at all, but you'd never know it. People think I'm probably very well versed in sports because I'm a curious person. So that's awesome. So now you have your little posse, I guess, when you get there. Now you actually get to meet them like in real world. Was that kind of strange or not? Because you had some virtual friendships, but now was it different when you actually met them in the real world? Did those connections stick? Talk to me about that.
So for me, because I've been so used to talking to people virtually, whether that's, when I'm in Scotland and I'm trying to keep in touch with my friends in Germany, it wasn't too difficult for me to continue that relationship or to continue that friendship when we met in person. And from there, it just bloomed and it enhanced on our friendship, because I would start to introduce them to other people. And that's kind of how the network grew.
It's awesome. Okay, so now we're in school. We've got our posse. We're making friends. And now you get somehow involved with this LinkedIn campus thing. When did that start? That was like a year into school or 5 months in, or?
Yeah, so that was at the end of my freshman year, starting sophomore year. So I posted an article about women in technology, because at that point I was a computer science major.
And you were like in Wix, you were Wix, right? In the Wix?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I noticed that in my classes, the majority of the people were male. So I wanted to voice that concern, and I wanted to create change. So I posted an article on LinkedIn, and that's really where it started, because I realized that that's a platform that I can voice my concerns, that I can share my ideas with other people. And from there, I realized that not many students were doing that. So that's the flipping point for me, because I wanted to create that change. So I started a workshop at Drexel that talked to students about how they can build a personal brand, as well as sharing their ideas and documenting their journey on LinkedIn.
Okay, wait a second. You're now teaching stuff. Like, what's going on? Like, wait a second. You write this article because you see this imbalance between male and female people in the engineering department, and it bothered you enough to be able to write this piece about it. And you post that as as an article to LinkedIn, but I'm seeing a disconnect. Like, how do we go from there to teaching stuff about LinkedIn? Like, what did you do after that? Did you then start posting other things? How did that snowball, I guess, from that
Sure.
first initial post?
Okay. So after that, after that, I got a lot of great feedback from both my peers and just from, my connections on LinkedIn. So I decided.
Feedback meaning like likes and comments?
Yes, likes and comments, people saying that, yes, because my idea was to create a program for freshman females that it would be an intimate community where they can share their ideas and they can share their concerns. And from there, I decided to reach out to faculty members, and I sent the article link to these faculty members via email. And a few days later, I got an email back saying that the dean wanted to talk to me because he had a similar initiative.
So wait, so you after you write this article, you're getting some positive comments, you're getting some likes. You then decide you're going to send the article to faculty. You found some faculty that you thought would be interested in it and said, "Hey, I just wrote this article," and you just emailed them. Is that kind of what you did? Why did you do that?
Because I saw that if my peers can, advocate for me in that way, that maybe the best way as well to create that change is to go to the people that are a bit higher up than me that can help me create this change.
So this is a really great example. This is in another great book called The Slight Edge. It's actually all over this book called The Slight Edge. What you're doing is you're not blaming, you're taking responsibility, and you're doing stuff. Like, you're trying to make the change rather than talk about how bad things are. Yeah. Woe is me. You're not woeing as me. You're seeing that there's something wrong that's bothering you. And rather than just complaining about it, which is what most people do, they complain and they whine about things. You are not doing that. You are actually proactively trying to bring more awareness to the problem and actually trying to fix the problem. So you send this article. It's awesome. So you send this article to some teachers, some professors. The dean gets wind of it, and now you're talking to him or her, or?
Yeah. So I was invited to speak to him, and because he had a similar initiative, we were able to work together, and I was able to turn this idea into an actual program. And so the first year that I started this program, along with my co-founders, we had up to 30 girls that joined.
And is this where you're starting to post more content to LinkedIn about this journey and this experience? Is that the theme of the content?
Exactly. So when I first started on LinkedIn, it was more about posting my concerns or my ideas about this whole gender diversity and gender gap in the technology field. So that's really where it started. That's where I realized that what I had to say actually has an impact and can create change.
Okay, so a lot of people that I speak to, this is a fantastic story, will say to me, "That's all great, but why should I be, as a college student, devoting my time to be able to creating content on LinkedIn?" Maybe I have a story, but why would I do this? What are the benefits that you would tell the college students that are listening to this as to why they would do it? I mean, I have my reasons, but what do I know? I'm a 50-year-old Jewish guy. I'm completely out of touch with the youth. I'm the first to admit it. Blessin, what would you say?
My advice would be, because it helps with your exposure and your visibility. So it's best to start young and it's best to start early. It's kind of the same as dwelling. So instead of dwelling and saying, okay, I'm just a college student, I'm just a freshman, what I have to say doesn't really matter in the professional world. That's where you need to stop yourself and turn it around and say, because I'm so young, because I have a different perspective to professionals, this is where my voice matters, and this is where I need to start voicing my concerns and sharing my ideas, because later down the line it will help me. And that's
in what way do you think it will help you? That's what I know you're doing this, you're passionate about it, you have now a voice, you're being heard. It sounds like you're investing in this because you're hoping it gets you some other place in the future. I'm curious to know what that is.
Okay. So let's look at it personally and professionally. Professionally, I know it will help me when it comes to internship opportunities or full-time opportunities, or just opportunities in general when it comes to speaking engagements or podcasts or article features. Personally, I know it will make an impact to other people, because it's like the whole idea of sharing your story, you never know who can be impacted by it, or who can get motivation from it, or who can be inspired by it. So that's really where it comes to, when it comes to, sharing your ideas, sharing your background, because you never know whose life it can change.
The more reach you have, the more conversations you have, the more opportunities get created that you didn't even know existed.
Exactly.
I think, Blessin, when you started writing about this topic, I don't think it was designed to be able to have a conversation with the dean, but that sort of happens. And there's going to be tons of other things. I mean, look at this conversation that you and I are having. Someone might see this and it's like a snowball effect, and reach is a real currency, just as valuable as money, to be able to have reach. I wholeheartedly agree. So another question that I typically get from college students is, what do I write about? Like, I'm not Blessin. I don't have this cause that she has. What kind of advice would you give to college students about getting started in terms of producing content?
Definitely. So this is kind of where the art of finesse comes into play, because you can talk about anything and you can turn it around into a way where it brings value to others instead of you're just bragging about yourself. And what I realized as well is that a lot of college students, for the ones that do create content on LinkedIn, it's about, I got an internship, or I went to this conference, or I got this scholarship. And in that sense, you're almost bragging. But an advice I give to all college students is that you can turn it from bragging to providing value to others. So for example, if you go on internship, instead of just saying, I'm so excited that I got this internship at this company, you can say, I got this internship at this company and this is how I did it. This is how I built up my resume. This is how I connected with people. Just giving advice to people can make all of the difference. And it flips the switch from bragging to actually providing value to others. So when it comes to documenting anything, what you learned from a class, what you learned from a TV show that you're watching. I know when I first started on LinkedIn, I posted 2 videos, one of me playing the guitar and one of me playing the piano. And you wouldn't think that a video like that would serve a place on a professional platform, but I switched it around. With me playing the piano, I titled it as "These Are My Keys to Success." And, I played around with the words piano keys. So I talked about the keys that I have to success. And the video that I was playing the guitar, I talked about how playing instruments and the skills I learned through playing instruments transfers into, the workplace. So when it comes to determination, to focus, everything like that, I talked about how I learned this through playing 5 instruments, but how this has also helped me in the workplace.
I think it's wonderful. It really humanizes you much more so than a resume could. I mean, Paige Kemna, I don't know if you know who she is, Blessin, but
yes.
so she's another one, right? Like, she was trying to break through and get a job, and she happened to have a talent singing and playing the piano. Exactly. And she created a singing resume. I think the story goes that when I interviewed her 4 or 5 months ago, she went to sleep, woke up like 200,000 things in her inbox and lots of opportunities. And again, it's a very authentic piece. Okay, this is really awesome. So if students wanted to get started, I think another thing that you said that's really interesting too is to be able to contact people that you want to learn more about. People are usually very open, especially if you're a college student. Let's say you wanted to work in sales or marketing at a specific company even. You could find out who people are in those roles, and you could reach out to them in email or in LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm starting a little video show on what it's like to work in this profession because I want to work there and I want to know all I can about sales from VPs of sales and what they look for. And you could actually start to interview prospective employers and get to know them a little bit. What you'll find is when people do you a favor, which is agree to be on your show, congratulations, you have a show. You don't need a network. You don't need antennas. You can have a show like Blessin has. When they do something kind for you, they're more likely to do other kind things for you as well. Exactly. If you can learn about the problems they're struggling with, and maybe you could figure out how to solve them, and you actually show that you're actually solving their problems and helping them in some way, guess who's going to be in line pretty much first when there's an opportunity? It's going to be you. And I don't think ever before, certainly when I was coming up, we didn't have these opportunities. But I think that's some really great advice, Blessin. Awesome advice.
Thank you. No, definitely.
Well, Blessing, you've said it all. We are going to post this up on the page, and hopefully when the class starts, if you're open to it, we'd love to have you Zoom in live and do some QA with the college students so I could actually step out of the way, because let's face it, nobody wants to really hear from me. I mean, let's face it. So thank you so much for Blessing for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.